In this video, we're going to look at the timeline for our modern atomic models, and we're going to look at what those models look like in terms of their drawings. So our modern atomic theory and our modern atomic models starts in 1803, and it starts with a guy named Dalton. And Dalton is the first contemporary chemist to come up with what we call the atomic theory. And so Dalton's atom was simply a solid sphere. And his model of the atom was, it had no internal structure, it was completely solid, it was the smallest piece of matter, it was indestructible. He said that all atoms of a certain type of element were the same, but they were different for different elements. Now we skip forward about 100 years, and we get to a guy named J.J. Thompson. And J.J. Thompson did some experiments, and after his experiments, he came up with an atom that was mostly positive, but it had some negative charges spread throughout. His model of the atom is typically called the Plum pudding model. I also like to think of it as the chocolate chip model or the blueberry muffin model, where your chocolate chip cookie or your blueberry muffin is the positive part, and then your chocolate chips or your blueberries are the negative electrons. Just a little bit later, in 1911, we had a guy named Rutherford. Ernest Rutherford. And Ernest Rutherford did some experiments with gold foil, and he came up with a model of an atom that you're probably going to be pretty familiar with. After his experiments, he came up with an atom that had a positive nucleus, and he called those positive pieces protons. Those were in the middle of the atom. And then he said his electrons orbited around the nucleus. And these are the orbits for the electrons. This is commonly called the planetary model of the atom, because he said that the electrons orbited the nucleus like our planets orbit the sun. And then in 1913, we had a guy named Niels Bohr. And Bohr did some experiments with flame tests, looking at the different light from different elements. And he made just a slight modification to Rutherford's model of the atom. Instead of the electrons orbiting randomly, Bohr said the electrons lived in specific concentric orbits. And so concentric means that it's circles building out from the middle. So kind of like an onion. So you have your nucleus in the middle, and then each energy level is another layer added to the outside. So we still have our positive nucleus, but then we have layers, these energy levels that go around our nucleus. And those are the energy levels where our electrons live. So we go from a solid sphere to a generally positive atom with some negative electrons spread throughout. And then we move to a positive nucleus with the electrons orbiting around the outside. And then finally we're going to end in this class with Bohr's model of the atom that has a positive nucleus with the electrons in specific concentric energy levels.